Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the polytechnic class today. And today we are going to be looking at the role of tax in governance, understanding the role of tax in governance. And I'm going to be your moderator for today. My name is Godson Kelly. So like we normally do it, we are going to give extra 5 minutes to get more people to join. So what you can do now is to reach out to your friends, your party members, your colleagues, and let them know that we are live. We've started the class. So in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to introduce our facilitator for today, who's already in the room, right? And as you join, please write your names on the chat box for attendance, like we normally do. So please, while we wait for the next 5 minutes, you can actually hold other people accountable by reaching out to them so that we can have more numbers by 5 minutes past 5. So I hope we can do that. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone, once again. So it's 5 minutes past 5, and we are just going to get started. Um, I hope you are also able to continue to reach out to your friends to let them join. I think 16 persons here, including the officials, is not a very encouraging number, right? So I don't know you guys to come in this late. So today we're going to be looking at understanding the role of task in governance. And our facilitator for today is Mr. Joe Miji Nyawa. So I'm going to read out his profile and then he will take over the class, right? So one thing I will encourage you to do is he's an expert because electoral college, it's all about finding out experts in all these subjects that we'll talk about. So through him, any question you have, feel free to ask, right? There is no wrong question. There is no bad question. So as long as it crosses your mind, asking, it's going to give you an answer. And I think this is a very important aspect of governance that we really don't understand, and most people don't understand. But then I believe he's going to do justice to it by explaining in details in ways that we can understand and of course carry it forward. So Joe Mijinyawa is a Nigerian born in Zaria. He started schooling in Zaria, Kaduna State, and proceeded to Ilorin, Kwara State later. Later, he studied sociology at ABU Zaria and did his NYSC in Enugu State. Joe worked at First Bank of Nigerian PLC for over 12 years. He is currently an ICANN student member. Joe is passionate about good governance at every level. He enjoys reading, teaching, and engaging in meaningful conversation. So it's a pleasure that we have Mr. Joe today on the platform. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Joe Mijinyawa. Joe stands for Joseph. All right. Am I audible enough?
Yes, loud and clear.
All right, all right. So I would say this is my first exposure at the Electoral College, though I was one time a participant. This is starting as a very good side of it because, as we know, the new government is all about taxes. Whether we like it or yes, we are here to face it as it is. So that's why I felt the need for us to see how we can teach ourselves more about taxation and see what the need for it is in governance. Not to take much of our time, I will just run through the slides and it will be a very, I would say, a very interactive session. I would also want to get your permission to ask questions in case anybody needs clarity. You're also free to come up with your questions so that we can all be on the same page. I want to throw it out to the house. If there's anybody that can give me just a hint, one or two people that can give me a hint of what they understand by tax. Hello? Anyone?
So guys, if you want to go, you can just raise your hand and then I'm going to call you. So I'm not sure nobody's raising up their hand.
Okay. So it's fine. So I would say first things first, tax.
Okay, sir, sorry for the interruption. We have two persons already. Yes. Okay, can I go ahead to call them now?
I think we have Jovita and Abigail. Yes, please.
Okay, so Jovita, I've asked you to unmute. You can just go ahead.
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me?
Good evening. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, tax to my understanding is a compulsory financial charge or some other type of levy imposed on citizens of a state or country by the government.
Yes.
In order to, use the funds on infrastructure and get moving the country forward.
Good one. Thank you. Next person.
Michael, I've asked you to unmute. Abigail, you can go ahead.
Good
Abigail,
evening,
are you there?
everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, good evening.
I'm here. Good evening. Tax in my knowledge is a compulsory financial contribution that the government imposes on its citizens and businesses, companies, you know, to get revenue that they can use to make life that they use to get revenue for which they use to develop the country. And yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. They have given us a very good background, and I'm confident that I will be speaking with people that have a fair knowledge of what we are discussing this evening. So a lot of us wonder why certain taxes are levied on citizens. Many of us have asked questions about what the government is doing with our taxes. We are here to understand more about governance and also taxes. So some of these questions, for instance, if you find yourself as a governor in Nigeria today, what would you do differently? If you're an advisor in government, what would you do differently to give people confidence about what is being collected? If you're a legislator in government, what bills will you put forward to ensure the government is run correctly? Are the priorities of the government necessarily the priorities of the citizens? These questions are all questions that will keep coming to our mind because we know that people pay taxes. A lot of us pay taxes either at our personal capacity or a business capacity. It is a lot, and the government receives a lot of funds from us, the citizens. But then, on this side of it, I won't take us as people who are going to be wailing, but I'm discussing with us as people who are going to be the ones to be in charge of the taxes. If you find yourself in that cycle, what would you do differently? So the objectives of this model would give us the reasons for tax and taxation, the need for government to collect taxes, which we already know it's a compulsory levy, who should collect tax, and what kind of tax should they collect, what are the basic principles of a good tax system, then the sources of our tax laws in Nigeria. At least we'll have a very fair understanding of this. Now, there are different definitions from different authors. We've had quite a number of them. Even Oxford Dictionary calls it money that you have to pay to the government so that they can pay for public services. Other definitions talk about it as monetary charge imposed by the government on persons, entities, or property levied to yield public revenue. There are many other definitions, but I will limit it to this. Tax can therefore be described as a form of levy imposed on all the residents living in, as well as non-residents doing business within a tax jurisdiction. It is a civic patriotic responsibility of citizens for them to pay taxes as imposed, which also come to the government as income or revenue yielding device to finance the provisions of socioeconomic and infrastructure amenities and also to enhance industrial efficiency. The process of levying and collection of tax from taxpayers is known as taxation. Now, let's talk about governance. It's telling us about monitoring and controlling decisions, as well as giving leadership direction. So when you're in governance, you are charged with a lot. You are charged with giving the direction and leadership in a particular entity. So what powers do you have to make decisions, and how are those powers used? These powers are used in terms of even the collection of the taxes and also how they are being utilized. Because as a government official, either a governor, a local government chairman, a president, those taxes, you are the one that would give the direction on how it is going to be collected. Yes, it is collected. How is it being distributed evenly? How do you utilize these taxes? How do you make people comfortable that, okay, we have collected this amount. How do we make our people happy? These are the issues we should be looking at. Are the governors held responsible or accountable for what they govern or how they govern their states? These are issues we should continue to trickle in our minds and see that there's accountability at all times in governance. From way back then, even those days of the Obas, the Emirs, the Ezes, the Atars, they were all part of this system. It was all part of what they were doing to ensure that they are able to control their kingdom or their jurisdictions properly. These taxes took the form of zakat, kudin kasa, a form of agricultural tax, shuka levied on ownership of cattle based on the number of cattle. We have also the ishakole, contribution of farm products. All these were done. So it's not new to us today if we say tax has always lived with us. These are things that we've always known. But the truth of the matter is, how accountable are you in governance, and how accountable are you in sharing these things evenly to the citizens? Because at the end of the day, you should be able to say that this is how much we have done, this is our budget, we have gathered this amount, and the citizens should be able to say, yes, we have paid taxes and they have been utilized accordingly. So we have the other native law ordinances, the non-native protectorate during the colonial era. All these, in fact, we remember the Aba Women's Riot of 1929 was as a result of imposing taxes on women. But of course, today we have gender equality, all that. We're being sensitive about the gender roles and all that. And so the issue of women being taxed is not even an issue today. So all of us are in business, all of us are workers, all of us have a way or the other that we pay our taxes, either directly or indirectly. So these are things that have always been there right from the colonial times up to the time in 1961, when the company's income tax was brought in through the Income Tax Management Act of 1961. They were repealed and amended, and that's how we came about the personal income taxes, the company's income taxes respectively. And till today, we have the Finance Act 2019, 2020, 2021, all been amended for us to be able to update what the government is doing in terms of tax administration. Now, we also would have to look at the objectives of taxation, which talks about revenue generation. First things first, as a government, one of your sources of income or funds to the government is tax, either oil or non-oil taxes. These are part of this, the sources of revenue, and taxation has to be the pivot of this. And you would agree with me that over the years, some of us that are into business will know that it's been kind of stringent. Tax officials have been coming after us, sending us letters and all that, and we're forced to do this. So some of the objectives would run through, which revenue generation is one of it. The country needs money for it to be able to run the affairs of the government. Then there's also the redistribution of income and wealth. We have progressive tax. The higher you earn, the higher you pay. So for instance, like in the case of Nigeria, where you have the small businesses with turnover below 20 million are given that leverage not to pay taxes. They are on zero taxation. While you have the ones of 20 to 100 million are paying at a percentage lower than those at the top, which is 20%. And then those at the top are paying at 30%, which means the higher you go, the higher you pay. And that's as a result of trying to make the the economy kind of balanced so that those who are struggling to grow are able to grow, while those that have reached a certain level are able to pay the taxes, and such taxes are used for the common good of all the citizens. Another objective of tax is management of the economy. The tax system can be used to regulate particular activities of the citizens. Some of these are levies and extra duties placed on items like maybe alcohol, sugar, cigarettes, betting. Sometimes you'd find out the government would take up a particular policy that would say that there's going to be an increase in the custom duties, excise duties on some of these items that are coming to the country or are being used within the country. And so people have to pay if they must enjoy it. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Lagos State has luxury tax. There's luxury tax, which is charged on, I think, hotels and certain restaurants. So by the time you find yourself there and they're charging you that, you know that, okay, it's because you are in this class of people who are able to meet up with that standard. And so you have to pay up to meet up with those things. So it's just a way of managing the economy. We also have the harmonization of economic objectives, which has to do with our membership in other international organizations, which includes ECOWAS, which is our immediate mother body for West Africa. So we're able to do it. We have single markets and all that. And so certain taxes are put in order to improve on the gross income of the countries and induce economic development and influence favorable balance of payments with other countries. So what makes tax a good tax? If you are to implement tax, for instance, how do you know what a good tax is? Adam Smith, 1776, was able to put up certain principles, which include equity, certainty, convenience, administrative efficiency, simplicity, productivity. It should be productive, and then flexibility and stability. These are all principles that are expected to give people that comfort, that even if tax is not so much a good thing, a lot of us run away from taxes, a lot of us don't want to hear about taxes, but when you hear about it, how equitable is it? Should the rich pay more while the poor pay less? Or no? Is it the other way around? Of course, there should be equity. So he who earns more should be able to pay more. People should be able to be certain about the time to pay, the manner of payment, amount to be paid, and they should be clear about what are the liabilities, what are the responsibilities of a taxpayer at any point in time. What should you do in order to pay your taxes? So once that certainty, equity is there, people find it very convenient. How is it? Is the time for payment? If they tell you now as a salary earner, you pay middle of the month, when they know that your salary comes at the end of the month, it will be kind of funny. And I think Nigerian system, companies' income taxes, gives you up to 6 months after you must have closed your accounting year for you to pay your taxes for the past year, which is companies' income tax, education tax, and all that. So it is convenient, at least to an extent. The administrative efficiency, how transparent and efficient is it? And how do taxpayers see the administration of taxes as very friendly in this case? Then is it simple to understand? Do taxpayers understand the fact that if they say payee, what is payee? Do people find it difficult to understand pay as you earn? Or is it something that they will now make it look like it's a Herculean task? So everybody's running helter-skelter. No, taxation should be as simple as possible. Productive. The taxation should be such that brings in sufficient revenue to the government. It should be such that if you are collecting it, the cost of administration should be less than the revenue that you will use to generate that tax. So when you are looking at the administration of taxes, you shouldn't say you're going to pay somebody like a firm, or you're going to pay a consultant to collect your taxes at an amount, at a fee that is going to be even less than what you end up generating at the end of the day. So it should be such that the cost of generating it should be as minimal as possible, and it should be able to generate something substantial for the government. Flexibility, stability. There should be flexibility so that people do run different businesses, for instance. Somebody does pure water, somebody does bottled water, somebody runs a restaurant, somebody does maybe renewable energy. Now, your tax should be able, a good tax system should be able to be flexible in such a way that all these people are carried along and they understand where they are placed within the tax system. Now, we have types of taxes. The proportional tax, which is just like I explained earlier about the company's income taxes, which is graded for those doing small businesses, 0. And for those doing a turnover of up to 100 million, from 20 million to 100 million, 20%. And those doing above 100 million are paying 30%. This at least gives people that leverage to say that the higher you earn, the higher you pay, which is fine. And then we have the progressive, our pay as you earn. You would see the money came to my pocket. I will be able to do this and that. So it's a progressive kind of tax. Then the regressive, which is the reverse of the progressive. Direct taxes are statutory taxes like the personal income tax, the company's income tax, capital gains tax, tertiary education tax, and then the petroleum profits tax that is now a hydrocarbon tax based on the Petroleum Industry Act of 2021. Then we have the indirect taxes, which has to do with the value-added tax. A lot of us pay it and we don't know, we don't feel it because it's included in the prices of items we pay or we buy. And then we have the stamp duties on agreements we do. Some of us who are into businesses, we do mortgages, we do all that. You would know that stamp duties are some of those indirect taxes you pay as a result of your agreements. Then we have excise duties and customs duties, which the Nigerian Customs Service collects. And so these indirect taxes affect the cost of living because the higher it is, the higher the prices will be. So somehow these are the areas where government could use to maybe reduce people's preference for certain products. Then they will tell you that if you must buy this product, you must be able to pay up to this amount. And so that gives people some hold on trying to buy such items. So it kind of controls the use of certain items. Now, we'll look at the tripod of taxation. Every tax system should have these 3 stands. You have the tax policy, you have the tax legislation, and the tax administration. The policy is generally talking about how what you intend to achieve. Like in Nigeria, at some point in trying to make tax a very friendly thing, the introduction of the self-assessment scheme came about, where you as a taxpayer will sit down from your business, you'll be able to do your tax computations after your profits, and then you do a self-assessment and you submit to the tax authorities, and from there they already charge you what they are expected to pay. And so when you submit your assessment to the tax authorities, they look at your financials and everything, they assess it, and they're able to say, okay, yes, what you paid was what was expected. Then we have the tax laws. There's no tax, whatever it is, that is not backed by the law. These are all backed by the law, and they've been it's usually a process because before they are approved, it goes through the legislature. They would, of course, sit on it and understand what are the benefits to the government and what have you. And so they assent to move it to the president, and the president gives his final assent, and it becomes an act. So we have the Personal Income Tax Act, we have the Companies Income Tax Act, we have the Capital Gains Tax Act, Value Added Tax Act, Education Tax Act, Stamp Duties Act, Hydrocarbon Tax of 2021. The Constitution vests the legislation of income tax, whether personal or corporate, on the federal government in order to promote uniformity. However, the 3 tiers of government share administration of various taxes. So at different levels of government, either at the federal, state, or local government, there are different taxes that they're assigned to administer. So you look at the federal level, you say corporate companies pay their companies' income taxes to the Federal Inland Revenue Service, while the personal income tax is paid to the state Board of Internal Revenue of the state of residence, so that individuals who reside within that jurisdiction are paying to the state. That is also the internally generated income of the state where they reside. Local governments also have their own, which are mostly levies, market levies, parking fees, all that. These are all means through which the government is able to put together these resources at different levels for them to run the government smoothly. The tax administration, like I mentioned earlier, we have the Federal Inland Revenue Service, which collects on behalf of the federal government, the state internal revenue services of the various states, and even the FCT has their own. Then the Local Revenue Committee, which also looks at local government levels, types of taxes, which are levies mostly. Now, some of the sources of the Nigerian laws are from our customary laws. Like I gave you a background from the history of taxation, you can see that it has always been in our customs and laws to pay taxes, either from the Yoruba side, the Igbo side, the Hausa side, whichever part of Nigeria it is. You would agree with me that at some point, when you probably go to the farm and you make your harvest, there is a percentage of what you harvest that goes back to a common pool, which is at the chief of or the head of our community who collects, and that is also now being later redistributed or used in terms of famine or something. So these are all things that have always been there and have lived with us. Like the examples we have of the zakat tax payable by adherents of the Islamic faith on their wealth, which has been in their possession for a full year. Such wealth includes monies, properties, Ishakole payable in the Yoruba land, Osusunku applicable in the eastern part of the country. Then we have the statute laws, like I mentioned to you earlier, the Personal Income Tax Act, the Companies Income Tax Act. And then we have the case laws, which has to do with judicial precedents from either the Supreme Court, Appeal Court, High Court, based on certain precedents, certain things that have happened in the past. They look at the interpretations of provisions of tax statutes and see how these things can be used to make our tax system better. We also have circulars from the Inland Revenue. We have opinions of tax experts and authors, and then budget and pronouncement of relevant ministries. And then fundamentally, we have the Constitution of Nigeria. These are all the sources through which the country is able to come up with its tax laws that are being used. It is very worthy of note that taxes are collected in order for the government to have adequate funds to run the affairs of the country. For the government to be able to, for instance, defend our territories, build infrastructure, pay its civil servants, tax must be involved. As such, in governance, we must know that tax is of utmost importance and must be collected by government. It should be noted that payment of tax is a constitutional duty of every citizen, and everyone should abide by this. As the saying goes, give unto Caesar what is for Caesar. That is all about tax in governance. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Joe. That was very short, precise, and straight to the point and full of information. So I believe we have questions, comments, suggestions, and all the rest. So as you normally do, is raise your hand. I'm going to call according to how you raise your hand, right? Then if you find yourself in a noisy place that might disturb the class, you might just put your question or your comment on the chat. Samuel, I've asked you to unmute to ask your question or make your comment. Thank you.
Hello, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. Thanks for the wonderful lecture. It's quite insightful, and I've learned a lot about tax and taxation. So my question is that with all these tax that government is imposing on business and entities generally,
Yes.
I don't have any issues with the tax because I think it is necessary for any country or any state to build their state or probably to provide infrastructures and what the citizen needs in that particular state. But what my problem is in the case of Nigeria is that we don't have a just use of this collected tax. Sometimes we don't even have a well-documented account for it, like the issue of the value-added tax that has been that has caused a lot of issues in the country in recent past. So how do we, because as citizens, if you are paying tax, you should know what these tax are being directed to or what are they being used for. So when we are paying a tax and we can't see the use of that tax, I think even as a citizen we will be discouraged to pay the tax. Or is there any system whereby we can strike a balance, or we can vet whatever the government is collecting and see adequate check and balances regarding taxation and all these revenues collected by government?
All right. So let me quickly respond to you.
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. So you see, taxes are being collected.
Yes, I can hear you.
By the tax administrators and given to government for everyday running of the government. Now, I would ask you a question also, sorry, in the midst of this, that do you understand the fact that your priorities as an individual?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah. So your priority as an individual cannot be the priority of a small community you live in. If, for instance, you are selected to head the few of us that are here now, 36 of us, we contribute an amount and give to you, and all of us keep quiet and watch you and expect you to, the first thing you will do is what concerns everybody, of course. Now, in the case of Nigeria, I will tell you that in the maybe last 10 years or more, we've had insurgents. We've been taxed by insurgents. Do you know how much the government spends on security? These are all things that are being shown in our budget every day. You see the budget for education, you see the budget. Some of us, it's open to us on the internet. You can find the budget, and even the I think if you go to Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and Planning, if you go to their website, there are certain times you would see them post the financial statement of Nigeria. Then if you go through budgets.com, you would find some of these things. These are things that you should be concerned about, and you should learn to look at them because it will reduce your kind of fears. I used to have these fears until I got exposed to it. Sometimes, and most times, what the government is going through, you might not have a slight idea about it. Of course, we know that I'm not exonerating any government. I'm not a government official. I'm not someone in government, but I'm just telling you from what I understand with governance and tax administration and spending of public funds. A lot of times, the priorities of the people is what the government. And that's why you have members of House of Rep. You have members, they come up, they raise their hands in the house, they tell you, my people are wailing, they're killing them in Zamfara, they're killing them in Meduguri, they're killing them. And then the government will take a stand. What do you want us to do? Send soldiers, send military, send. It is from these taxes we pay these people. We buy ammunition from these taxes. It is not just the tax that is even our source of income. We also have oil revenues. We have royalties from oil wells. We also have loans. We have grants from foreign countries and all that. So most times we as citizens might look at it that this government is not doing anything. But I will tell you categorically that a lot goes down. Unfortunately, not everything the government does would affect us directly. But in a common ground as a country, I can assure you that our taxes are being utilized.
All right, thank you for the response, sir. Well, I also have a kind of reservations to your response, sir, because I think whatever the government is doing, there should be a transparency so that it will remove any possible doubts in the mind of the citizen. They are ruling the citizens, and if they are trying to do anything in favor of the citizen at any particular point in time should understand what the government is doing with whatever they are contributing in form of tax. And in my own opinion, because of the recent issues that happened with the VAT and the value-added tax in Nigeria, I think just like the oil thefts we are having in the with our crude oil and resources, I think there is so many tax being collected by the government, which is not even reported or reflected in the national accounts. So in my own issue is that I would rather encourage the government to come with a system whereby everything collected can be reflected adequately. And then we should even know what Nigeria is really generating or what is coming to Nigerians' accounts in form of IGR from taxes. And the system should be well transparent enough to know where this money is also being directed to.
Okay, like I mentioned earlier, I said there are resources you could reach out to, the website of the Federal Ministry of Finance and Budget and Planning. It gives you some insight into understanding the expenses and income expenses of the government. The financial statement of the federal government is being posted most times on that site. And then also, you know, some of us were very, very internet savvy, Inland Revenue recently, they've been doing these tax matters where they showcase some of the projects that have been undertaken by the loans, by the taxes that have been collected. I would also set your mind back to the fact that sometimes as a result, undertaking certain there are quite a number of things that our taxes are being used for, and I think we should try as much as possible to just seek for knowledge a little further to see that some of these our fears are being dashed. Thank you.
All right, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Yes, sir. Yeah, next. Hello. Who's next?
Okay, I think Godson has gone off.
Okay.
Amadine, you can just unmute and ask your question.
All right. Good evening. Thank you for the lecture.
Good evening.
All right. So I just wanted to quickly ask about the case that was in the news for so long last year involving Rivers State and the FIRS. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. You know, the argument that VAT on personal income tax, I believe, should not be collected by federal, but collected by states. I just want to get your thoughts on that. I don't even know how it ended up, you know, rounding up or it is still in court. So, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that question. I want to set your mind back to the fact that Nigeria remains a federal state. And at the same time, we run a federal fiscal system in which whatever is collected at any level is being shared. Now, there's a sharing formula because all these monies we're talking of are being paid into the federation account. That's through the TSA or what have you. And then from there, it is being shared amongst the federal, state, and local government. If I can remember vividly, I think the federal gets about 56%, the state gets about 30-something, and then the local government gets the balance. And even this VAT that we're speaking about, it has its own sharing formula, of which the states even receive higher than the federal government and the local government. And there, because of course, the governor had his own reason for coming up with that kind of statement. I'm sure he must have thought of something in the course of looking at his revenue. He'll say, I can do better if these people will leave it with me. But because Nigeria needs to continue to exist as a federal state, and so we understand, I'm sure you would understand the fact that not all states have the same resources. And so there is a need for us to share these resources across board. And so if you dwell on the fact that every state should collect, I think we might come to the point of some states surrendering and telling you that we'd rather not be a state. That's my own personal opinion. But I think he was right in a way. I wouldn't say he was wrong. And at the same time, the federal government also has its own reasons for keeping us as an entity being Nigeria. So sometimes we look at it from, in fairness to the federal government, I think VAT has been shared evenly so far that I know of, based on the sharing formula, because the federal allocation and FAC committee they always would post it on newspapers. They tell you they are sharing so amount for so collected as companies income tax, how much was collected as VAT, how much collected as stamp duties. So in fairness, I think the federal government, of course, must have stopped the case at its own level so that the governor also understands some of these things we might not be able at our own level, own end. That's what I would say.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. I think your network is fluctuating a bit. Okay, we have
Hello,
Moses.
Okay.
Amadine.
I
hope that was clear enough.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So Moses, please, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, thank you, Chamia. Good evening, sir. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Moses.
Thank you so much for the insightful lecture. And first of all, I just want to make a quick comment, then a question. Now, I know that one of the major reasons why some Nigerians don't want to pay tax is because of this lack of transparency, where we don't see what our tax is being used for. But you were able to give us an insight into how some of these expenses are made and so on and so forth. But even at that, you find a situation whereby, okay, just like you said, so much is spent on security and we're still having challenges around insecurity. So it makes so many people to question, if you're spending so much on security, why are we still having that problem? Now, to my...
Sorry, Moses, unmute yourself. Moses, unmute yourself, please.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
I'm unmuted. Okay. So My question is this. One of the major players in the Nigerian economy, they fall under the category of the informal sector or the informal economy. And you find a situation whereby the informal sector in Nigeria is so wide. And I think one of the reasons is the fact that you find small businesses having or not having access to certain credit facilities and so on and so forth. Yet government is imposing so much tax on this informal sector. Is there a way, or this is me just thinking, is there a way that government can balance this to make the informal sector trust the government to the extent of paying tax? For instance, in 2021, I registered a company, and the
Hello.
Moses, are you there? Okay, I think maybe his network.
Yeah.
Moses, are you there? I've asked you to unmute.
Yes.
Okay, Moses, I got you up to the point where you say you registered a company in 2021.
Yes, sir.
All right, go ahead, please.
Okay, so what I was saying is you find the whole registration of companies in Nigeria becoming so cumbersome, right? And then that is why I think that's one of the reasons why people in the informal sector don't want to pay tax or are not excited to pay their tax. Is there a way government can balance this to encourage people in the informal sector to pay tax? My question, I don't know if you were able to get the question.
So I have this to say. We have different types of taxes. We have the company's income tax, we have the VAT, we have the personal income tax. Now, for a simple business, for instance, like you say, you registered a company. I don't know if it was a corporate, as a limited liability company or just an enterprise. However, if it is a limited liability company, you are supposed to pay company's income tax, provided your turnover within your accounting year is below 20 million. You do not pay any taxes. However, if you are rendering services, you're doing contracts and you're charging VAT, you are expected to file for VAT at the Federal Inland Revenue Service. Supposing it's an enterprise, you reside, for instance, and you do business in a particular jurisdiction, maybe a state where you reside. That's where your business is. That is where you're expected to pay your taxes, and that's personal income tax, since it's a one-man business kind of registration. So for partnerships, for sole proprietor, you pay personal income tax. But once it's a limited liability and you are doing below 20 million turnover, the government does not charge you for anything. They only ask you to file your returns. You're expected to register with the Federal Inland Revenue Service to get the tax identification number, which is also supposed to guide you. The reason why I'm happy with having this discussion is the fact that a lot of us Nigerians are even ignorant of what is expected of us in business. A lot of us go into business without understanding some of these things. And I was shocked when you mentioned that the informal sector, because I know the Finance Act 2020 or 2020 had already graded the tax rates for companies' income taxes. And for even the personal income tax, you still have allowable and non-allowable expenses, which when taken out would result to your chargeable tax, the amount that the authorities are supposed to charge you. So if you don't know how to categorize this payment and all that, sorry, I think my slides or my module was not as in-depth. Maybe it would have solved some of these questions you're asking, but on a general note, we need tax consultants, and there are a lot of them around us. You need an accountant, a full-fledged accountant that can actually look into your books and advise. But most of us Nigerians, number one, we try as much as possible to sit on the table and throw blames, but we don't look at ourselves as to what have we done extra to understand what the government is doing. And so that was why when I started this class, I was saying, let's try and look at it not from the other side of it, not from the citizen that is complaining, but imagine yourself in governance. If today you're saddled with the responsibility to hold an office, would you exempt those people from taxes? If yes, why? And if you would not exempt them, why would you tax? You see, when you understand it from that angle, you will know that the government actually has a right, or I wouldn't say, yeah, well, it's a right, because it's the right of the citizen, it's a duty of the citizens to ensure that they pay their taxes. And for the government to run itself, it needs this money. So we can't sit back and think that, no, some people should be exempted. Most of these online businesses, for instance, make a lot of money, but they hide under the fact that they are virtual, they are not seen, nobody can trace them to their office, and so they evade taxes. But that's not the right thing to do. The right thing to do is when you register a company, you should be able to go forward to the tax authorities and get the right things done, so that at the end of the day, you know that you will never be found wanting. Because some people, as simple as filing of their returns to the tax authorities, they don't do that. And because of that, when they now follow them and tell them to pay penalties and interest, they now start shouting, hey, these people are thieves. But they are not thieves. They're doing their job. Tax administration is their job. So please, let's, I don't know if I've answered you appropriately, but at the same time, let's also look at it from the two sides of the coin, either as a citizen who is being charged, or as the government who is being the one administering this taxes on its citizens. Thank you. Hello?
Godson, you can continue.
All right, thank you very much. So I was lost. I wanted to know where we are. So the next person is Smith to go, right?
Yeah,
Smith.
Smith.
Okay, so Smith, I've asked you to come in, but we lost him.
Uh-oh.
Okay, he's here. So Smith, I've asked you to unmute. You can go ahead.
Why is it okay? Why?
Hello.
Why didn't you tell me
Hello?
my laptop is not available for
Yes,
now?
good evening.
Yes, Smith. I think your background is kind of noisy.
Okay, I think it's better now.
Oh, yeah, it's better. Thank you.
All right, sir. My appreciation for the wonderful lecture that was so summarized. Thank you. Okay. My question goes, please. The effect of tax on the newly established businesses. Please, I just want you to enlighten us.
Okay.
The effect of not having a T.
Okay. So as it is,
Has an effect when you're trying to register, maybe. Yeah.
Pardon?
I said I want to believe it has some effect when you are trying to register a business if you don't have a taxpayer identification number. And if you are a Nigerian citizen and maybe you stay outside the country, please explain how the tax, and then you want to do business in Nigeria as well. Okay, so how does tax, the payment of the tax come in? How is it regulated?
Okay. So first things first, you spoke about the registration. I used to know that at a point in time when you register a company with CAC, automatically FIRS gives you a TIN number. There used to be a synergy. But along the line, I think they've lost that synergy. But I think at every point you register a company, it is expected that you go forward you register as a business, sole proprietor business or a partnership, which is an enterprise, for instance, it's just a business name, the way we call it, business name, you would be treated as and so your taxes will be based on you as an individual. You'll be taxed at the end of your business year or your accounting year. Now, if you register as a corporate company, limited liability company, which is a company, and you'll be given, is free. So once you step up to the tax office, you are expected to register your TIN. You are expected to register at the office closest to your business premises, so that at any point, whether you do business or not, you have a financial statement. Yeah, you're expected to take a copy for filing assessment form. And I think recent times, FRS has come up with a model, a platform called the Tax Pro Max. If you read about it, if you go online, you see a lot of things they write about Tax Pro Max. When you look at it from that angle, you would understand the fact that it has been made very simple and easy for you as an individual or as an entity in business to be able to come up with your self-assessment without even having to interface with the office. The Tax Pro Max again gives you a way of registering with the tax authorities, and then you do your filing. Every month, once you file it, it submits itself to the tax authority. They will audit it and check, okay, is what this person is saying, is it true? They might even visit your business premises, check out what you are doing to be sure that what you have reported is exactly what it is. Outside Nigeria.
You're breaking.
That's not to shipping line. For instance,
Your line
you have a
seems to
shipping
be
line
breaking.
or a British Airways. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah,
Yes,
your
we can
line is
hear
breaking,
you.
but we can't hear you clearly.
Okay. You're actually breaking, sir.
And we can't hear you anymore, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we just started hearing you.
All right. Sorry for that. I think that businesses, for instance, for that part of their business, but for every other thing they are doing in any other part of the world is not their business. But that which they do within Nigeria is going to be taxed. So for instance, the air tickets you buy online for British Airways, Lufthansa, and all that, provided you are going to leave from Nigeria, and that flight is going to land to pick you in Nigeria, which means they are going to do that business in Nigeria, whether they're resident or not, they'll be charged. And so for every business that either comes in to do business or does business virtually with Nigeria, it is expected that they pay their taxes to the Nigerian authorities. Now, for an individual who is not resident in Nigeria, for instance, for up to 183 days, which is about 6 months, even within Nigeria, if you do not spend up to 6 in that jurisdiction. You must have resided in that place for a very long time. That at the joint tax board level, where you have, for instance, I think some banks have their headquarters in Lagos, and their staff in Maiduguri, in Kano, are being charged by Lagos Inland Revenue Service, and then the state where they reside, they are not paying anything. And so recently, I think Kaduna State itself, they did something like closing of the bank because of non-payment of certain kind of taxes, because they realized that, I think the same issue, those people who reside in Kaduna, but their taxes are being paid at their headquarters or something. So some of these things, they are laid down principles for them. In the tax laws, they are all spelled out. So if we understand these things properly, it actually helps us as individuals, as businesses, so that we do the right things. And even if the tax authorities come up to us and trying to make us feel like they're bullying us, we should be able to know our rights, we should be able to know our duties and our obligations as citizens, especially when it comes to taxes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Smith. I hope that answered your question. So I can see your agreement on the chat. So we'll go over to Benjamin now. Benjamin, I've asked you to unmute, so you can go ahead and ask the question.
Hello, good evening.
Good
Thank you
evening,
so much for the lecture this evening. I have a practical instance. Late last year, my company entered into an agreement. I was sublet, some aspects of a federal contract.
Sorry, you went off for a bit. I didn't. You said it last year. Something. You mentioned late last year. It went
yes.
kind of mute, so I didn't hear you.
I said late last year.
Yeah.
I was sublet an aspect of a federal contract. When submitting my quotations and all, I added VAT. The contractor.
The line is breaking.
Okay.
Yes, I got you to the point where you said a contract or something sometime last year.
Yes, the main contractor of the contract, yes. I mean the project, all right, said because I added VAT to my own fee, my own quotation, I will also pay the amount to the main company, with which the company will now pay, to FIRS. I feel because my contract is not up to 20 million, I shouldn't pay that.
Is somebody else having the same experience as I am doing?
Sir?
It's kind of breaking. I didn't get the flow of your question.
Okay, fine. I'll just type it on the chat box so that we don't.
Okay, I think it's from your end, because from here it's very loud.
Okay, so
it's not breaking.
Can you give me a breakdown of what he said so that he can continue?
If it is okay, I can just drop it on the chat. It's okay.
Okay, I'll read it.
So he was trying to say that his company was subletting a contract, and he added VAT on the quotation. Then I think the company that is managing the sublet told him that since he added VAT, he's going to pay the company so that they will also pay FIRS. Benjamin, I don't know if that's
okay. Naturally.
Okay. So I don't know what he was trying to ask his question before you now interrupted.
Okay. Because I did really get everything he said. It was breaking, so I think it was from my end.
Okay, no problem. So I think he's dropping it on the chat now.
Yes. Well, I can see somebody dropped something about if a small business has to hire the services of a tax consultant, that is an additional cost that will really help the business. Yes, it's an additional cost. However, we're expected to incur certain costs in business naturally, and there are certain expenses that are allowed by the tax laws. Probably if we have the chance and we have the time sometime later, maybe in another forum like this, we might discuss into details certain kind of taxes that we use every day as Nigerians, so that the little information, the little experience we have, we can share with us so that people would understand some of these things. Because sometimes it comes to some people as just a very funny joke when somebody tells you that, but I'm going to spend a lot to do this. But it's easier for you to spend a little than for you to be charged penalties later for not complying. All right, he has dropped it. I have a contract that the total sum is less than 20 million. The main contractor insisted that I must pay VAT simply because when I submitted my quote, I added VAT. What is your professional advice? Naturally, we know there's what we call withholding taxes, which is also being withheld by businesses, and you as a business will now collect a credit note from the principal. So like in your case now, you charge them VAT. So they will tell you that they will withhold a percentage of your, sometimes they withhold up to 10%, some of them 15% of your contract sum. So when you are doing business as an individual or as an entity, for instance, if you know that 20 million is the cost, in your actual cost, and you are expected to pay VAT, you can do VAT inclusive. You add VAT to that amount, which is at 7.5%, so that you give them a full bill. Your 20 million on top, then you put your VAT and put the amount, and so the total is there. If they tell you they want to hold it and pay the VAT, let them do it, but they should give you the credit note. The credit note should be in your name. Naturally, if they are going to pay on your behalf, it means that they should be able to have, you should be able to have a credit note, and that credit note, when it comes to you paying your company's income tax, you can present it to tax authorities and they will use that to defray your company's income tax. However, if it's an individual entity, you can still tender it to your State Board of Internal Revenue for them to use that to defray your taxes. So you don't stand to lose anything. If they insist they want to do it, then you insist on getting your credit note from them, so that when they pay it to FIRS, they should give you evidence of payment. If FIRS comes to meet you for not paying tax, you tell them, my principal has paid it and I don't have a problem. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Benjamin, I hope that answered your question. So that explanation was quite insightful. Okay, yeah. So he agreed. So I don't know if any other person has another question. Because I think there are no more questions coming. So I don't know if you have final notes that you want to leave with the class.
Well, for the class, like I mentioned earlier, I would always advise us to seek knowledge and always go after knowledge. Most of the items we need to know about business, about all these things are out there for us. On the websites of various institutions of Nigeria, you find out that the information you find there is mind-blowing. You would find the budget of Nigeria on a particular site. Either you go to is it MBS, you get some of the information from MBS, so there's a lot we can get from the internet to keep us abreast with the happenings. Now, for those of us in business, don't relent. Continue doing your business. Pay your taxes when you have to, as always, and ensure that you do your part so that when it comes to voting out the government, you would go proudly to say, yes, okay, they didn't do anything for me. You have the power to vote. You vote the person out, let the next person come in. If you are also at that other end of the coin, you should be able to say, yes, I have served my people. They have served me and I'm serving them back, and I'm going to give them back what they expect from me. So on this note, I want to say thank you very much for listening, and it's my pleasure to always give you guidance anytime you need it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. I really appreciate, on behalf of the class, to say thank you very much for delivering a very insightful and precise lecture. So thank you. We've learned a lot.
Thank you very much.
I would look forward to having you in the next cohort as well to share this knowledge.
Always available. Always
Thank
available.
you so much.
Thank you.
So guys, thank you so much for joining today. And I think we've come to the end of the class. It's another class tomorrow, and I hope you are able to join. So I don't know, Lisa, if there are other informations that we need to pass to them. So,
No, there's none. There's none. Thank you, sir, Mr. Joe, for the very insightful class. It was really enlightening. Thank you so much for your time. Okay, I think he has everyone left the chat. All right, thank you everyone for joining. Don't forget your assignments. Tomorrow is the deadline. You can submit on the Telegram. Okay.